Well, good afternoon, everybody. It should have been obvious within about 10 minutes of the events that unfolded on Wednesday at the Capitol building that the reaction, the vast overreaction, the hysterical, extreme, authoritarian, opportunistic reaction to that event, to all that transpired, was going to dramatically dwarf in significance the actual event itself. Let's just recapitulate it. Trump pledged that he would join the enraged marchers at the Capitol building. Instead, he went home and continued to watch TV and tweet. He abandoned the supporters. The supporters then did engage in some fairly wild mob activity, stormed the Capitol, entered the chambers, ransacked a few offices. Unusual? Sure. Worthy of note? Absolutely. Meriting of a gigantic corporate and state crackdown of which we are only now in the early phases? Come on. This is insanity. Whatever threat was posed by that event on Wednesday was quickly and expeditiously dissipated by, guess who? Agents of the state, which were brought in to disperse and arrest the participants. And guess what? Many of them are now going to prison. Trump conceded the election within about 24 hours in humiliating fashion. But the actual dissipation of the alleged threat, which was never a coup attempt, it was something, it was a spectacle. It was an opportunity for a bunch of people who have been deluded by these prophecies of election fraud and such. It was an opportunity for them to, I don't know, let off some steam, get themselves in big trouble. But it was not a coup attempt. A coup attempt is when you actually attempt to seize the levers of state. And there was no attempt at such seizure. If you want to know about a real coup attempt, go on Wikipedia, look up the coup attempt which occurred in Turkey in July of 2016. That was a real coup attempt. This was just a pantomime of a coup attempt driven by people who had been turned into insane people by their immersion in these internet alternate universes where somehow Mike Pence was going to unilaterally throw the election to Trump. I mean, it was just fantasy. So that occurred. The threat, such as it ever existed, which it barely did, is over, neutralized. Trump cucked. But that was never going to satisfy those who reckoned, rightly, accurately, that they could exploit this event for profit. CNN had its most watched day in history on Wednesday, more than any presidential election, more than 9/11, more than name your dramatic news event. Wednesday was the most watched day of television for CNN in its history. That's a lot of money rolling in, a lot of ad revenue. So they got to milk that for all it's worth. So one thing that you can do to exploit this set of circumstances is get a lot of money. And you can also consolidate your power. And that's what these tech officials have done in concert with their boosters in the media and in the government. by taking it upon themselves to execute what is now the most drastic, simultaneous, coordinated purging institution of corporate censorship that we've seen in at least modern history. Trump banned yesterday out of the blue from Twitter, which is, for better or worse, his primary communications mechanism and has been for years. Trump would not have even won the Republican nomination, I would wager, in 2016 if it hadn't been for his ability to dominate the discourse with his madcap Twitter antics. So he's purged, and he's purged for what reason? Well, the officially stated rationale is that the judicious Twitter officials assessed recent tweets and thought that they could no longer allow the platform to enable further incitements of violence. Well, what does incitement mean? Incitement is a question that has been long litigated in the history of First Amendment law. Generally, if you're an advocate of free speech, what you want to do is ensure that incitement is a narrowly tailored doctrine that only applies to situations where there's a direct call for violence or harm or something that is straightforwardly, self-evidently done to bring about direct harm, physical harm. So if I say online, so-and-so is at X address, go murder him, that's incitement to violence. That is much more than hyperbole, much more than protected political speech. That is a direct threat. What did Trump do? At his wild and crazy speech on the afternoon ahead of that joint session of Congress, which, by the way, was barely even funny anymore. It was almost sad. In the past, his airing of grievances at least was at least had the benefit of being entertaining. This was not really. And all he did was first falsely pledge that he would accompany the marchers down to the Capitol, but he encouraged their expression of political speech, diluted speech, futile speech, speech that was not going to actually bring about the result that they claimed that they wanted, but political speech nonetheless, which is afforded protections under the law and the Constitution. Trump did not say barge into the Capitol building, imprison Mike Pence, behead AOC, or anything like that. But now incitement is being attributed to whatever that was, and it's being used to implement these vast new censorship initiatives, which is something that the liberal and left power structures had desperately wanted to do anyway, but now they seize upon this opportunity and capitalize on a crisis, which is pretty standard stuff as far as crises go. But now it's resulting in mass corporate censorship on a scale that we haven't seen yet. Superseding, overriding the democratically elected sitting president. Trump is still going to be in office for another, 12 days? These are the tech companies asserting that they have domination. They have discursive power that surpasses or supplants that of the sitting democratically elected president. And even if you loathe Trump, if you hate Trump, even if you want him out, I'm kind of sick of him as well at this point. Not that I was ever a fan, never voted for him. But This idea that you're going to cheer, this arrogation of unchecked, unaccountable corporate power because it happens to align with your short-term political desires is lunacy. And it shows that you are an authoritarian at heart. You want punishment to be doled out against your political enemies by these corporate officials. You want them to do your bidding. You love the idea of enemies being purged without warning from the internet, without any opportunity for appeal or oversight. That's your mindset. That's your mentality. You are an authoritarian at bottom, and you can dress that up with all the liberal pablum that you want. Oh, we have to protect the safety of marginalized folks with an X. We have to stop the violence. No, what you're stopping is free expression. What you're stopping is political speech as a presumptively protected activity. That's what you're doing. And so that's the result here for journalists and media people to be in this celebratory stupor. Shows you how warped they are. It shows you how they view their jobs, which has shifted pretty substantially over time. Free expression, free speech used to be a core precept of journalism. Now it's apparently antithetical to journalism. Paramount for them is punishing their enemies. That's what they want. That's what they crave. That's what they shriek about nonstop, day after day online. That's what this Trump-induced mania over the course of 5 years has instilled in them as their guiding operating principle. That's who they are. So take note. Make a mental note of who it is that is behaving in this manner and see if, in the long run, what they're advocating is beneficial to your interests. Just see. So I did a Medium piece on this. It's in the description box. And all I can say is this is only the beginning. Soon this will fully merge with the apparatus of state on January 20th. The purge will continue. We're in the midst of what I've called, somewhat cheekily, but not entirely, as a George Floyd 9/11 style episode, which is going to be exploited to the max by those who now wield power. Got a couple super chats. Thank you, as always. Chris says, were the rioters chanting hang Mike Pence or something more than a pantomime? Sincere thanks for your work. They may have been. I don't know. I haven't heard that. It's possible. But Mike Pence was never going to be hanged. Extreme political rhetoric is a constant of American politics dating back to its founding. So this idea that we're going to allow some knuckleheads chanting hang the vice president at the behest of Donald Trump to justify this imposition of like a corporate authoritarian monoculture is preposterous. So maybe they did chant that. But okay, people chant nutty things. Always has been the case and will continue to be the case. Dan says you can contribute to free speech by finding a way to manage all of your super chats, including ones that scroll off at the end of the session. Yeah, you're right. I apologize for occasionally missing super chats, so I'll take that to heart. And I know I've said that I was going to remedy that in the past, but at least right now I'm trying to go through all of them dutifully. Darren says, thank you for your calm perspectives as always, Mr. Tracy. There are vanishingly few that can maintain this today. Look, thank you, but I don't want to valorize myself. A lot of this is just commonsensical, I would think. A lot of this should be obvious to you if you are not beholden to the mob mentality, which is so omnipresent on the internet. And I don't think it should be this amazingly impressive skill necessarily, but if I'm somebody who can provide something of a counterweight, then good, that's what I will do. Roburl 1983 says, fan from Windsor, Ontario. Will the oligarchs come for the Glenn Greenwald type soon? Look, I think that they're not going to stop here. I think that they are. Look, what they did was they banned the president. So that's about as drastic as you can pretty much get. So it wouldn't surprise me if they continue down that course. In fact, I would be surprised if they didn't. So I'm not going to speculate as to who in particular might be next, but they simultaneously did this orchestrated purge, not just of Trump, but of Sidney Powell, Mike Flynn, both of whom I think are probably nutty to begin with, but have gone extra nuts in this post-election period. Sidney Powell in particular, who really was a false prophet for a lot of online figures. Lynn Wood as well, who went just totally off the deep end. So I'm not substantively defending these people. I'm substantively defending a principle for free exchange of ideas, which I think is more necessary than ever. Then, of course, they terminated Bannon from YouTube. So this isn't just Twitter. This is exactly like we saw on a much lesser scale, obviously, but still in 2018 with Alex Jones, when he was simultaneously purged by all the platforms pretty much at once. That was an awesome power that was on display, and that too was cheered by the corporate journalists. So they will never save you from this. They are actually at the forefront of demanding this censorship. Paul says, thanks as usual for being a sane voice. Well, thank you for listening. I appreciate it, and reading. Nicholas says, go on Red Scare. I love Red Scares, so I agree. All right. I will leave it there for now. There will be more to say, I'm sure. Thank you for jumping in at short notice to this stream. Read the article that's attached, and we'll talk soon.